Welcome to the Nairobi Health Show, everybody. I've got Bryce Henson here today. Bryce, thanks for coming on the show.
Dave, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here today.
Yeah, and as you can see in Bryce's background, he's with Fit Body Bootcamp, and we got some really great talking points that I think are going to be really interesting to people. And first of all, I want to read his bio for those of you that don't know who Bryce is, or maybe never heard of Fit Body Bootcamp. Chances are you have. It's one of the fastest growing fitness companies in the U.S. Is that right, Bryce?
That is correct. Fastest indoor fitness franchise in North America.
Fantastic. And we're going to learn all about it. But first of all, Bryce is the CEO of Fit Body Bootcamp, the world's fastest growing fitness bootcamp franchise, having over 10 plus years of experience in the fitness industry, owning 2 FBBC locations. Bryce's passion is spreading fitness to the world. He is mentoring fitness professionals on how to grow their businesses and change more lives in their local communities. He also co-leads FBBC Mastermind Group, an exclusive coaching group for high-performing fitness professionals. And so, Bryce, you guys are kind of leading the way right now in the cutting edge fitness science and some of the things that we're learning about fitness. And as I look at my lifetime of experience in fitness, it's come a long way, right?
Oh, sure.
And there's certain things we have learned. There's things that maybe many people listening to this podcast have tried in the past in their journey to get fit, maybe going out running, right? Getting on a machine, standing on the elliptical for long periods of time while watching a movie or Instagramming.
Totally. I mean, literally, that's what I think the industry was, or at least there's still clients out there that, practice steady state cardio and elliptical, long, low intensity, which is a shame because, most clients, at least that we serve, are interested in fat loss and weight loss. And that's really not conducive to hitting your goal.
Yeah, which it can seem so counterintuitive, right? Like as human beings, when we get our heart rate up and we put on a sweat, whatever we're doing, right? We feel like we're really making progress. We're really doing something. And yet the science tells us that the heart rate we exercise at, the duration, the intensity, that there's a certain combination of factors that when you get them right, make a tremendous difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Dave, to your point, the biggest correlation and combination, again, it really depends on your goal. And that's really what it comes down to. But most women, which are both of our audience, are interested in weight loss and fat loss. And if you're looking to go that avenue, steady state, low intensity cardio for a long period of time on the elliptical, watching Instagram on your iPhone, that's just unfortunately not going to do the trick for you. It's certainly better than nothing. And, that will still make you healthy to an extent. But if you're looking to, burn fat and lose weight, the combination is a high intensity interval training program. You actually can work out less time, but more high intensity, get that heart rate up, and ultimately you'll burn more calories throughout the duration of high intensity. But more importantly is the combination of the resistance training. And a lot of times, Dave, and I know you've heard this feedback before, and just this misconception, especially for women that are joining a program, is I don't want to lift a lot of weights. I don't want to get big and bulky like the Hulk. And my response to that is, well, unfortunately, that's not what the science says. In fact, if you build lean muscle, you actually break down the fibers, you build that. You actually are able to increase your metabolism, increase your ability to burn calories at a steady state far after your workout, upwards of 48 hours. And the technical science term for that is EPOC, but really, we like to say at Fit Body Bootcamp, that's just the afterburn effect. And that way, in a shorter condensed amount of time, in our case, 30-minute sessions, but you add the high intensity interval training or metabolic conditioning, and then also the resistance training. And when you do that, you actually increase your heart rate, increase the amount of calories, and then also your body is able to burn calories way longer, and you look leaner and you look fitter. And I guess the last bullet point on that is people always say, well, Bryce, if what weighs more, muscle or fat, and the answer is, well, 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat, they weigh the same. They're both 5 pounds. But when you look at the comparison, 5 pounds of muscle is much leaner, smaller, condensed, more tone than 5 pounds of fat, which is just kind of heavy and just sits there, unmetabolic tissue. So that I'll say long-winded, that is what the science is showing us. And that's why we're excited to, serve our clients.
Yeah, and it's a great point that you bring up. 5 pounds is 5 pounds. And the fact is, many people use the word weight loss when really what they technically mean is fat loss, right? Let's face it. I mean, it's really not so much what the scale says, unless the context is that you had 30 pounds of excess fat before, and now you only have 20 pounds of excess fat. That's wonderful, of course. But I love the fact that you point that out. And what really matters, even more than the scale, I think, is our body fat percentage. Right?
Absolutely.
I mean, personally, that's what I go for. I'm much more interested in my body fat percentage than my actual overall weight. Right?
Oh, 100%. And what you said was really interesting, kind of going through my own fitness transformation. This is over 15 years ago in early 2007. And I wasn't an obese guy by any stretch of the imagination, but I definitely wasn't fit. I grew up in the Midwest, great place, amazing people, not necessarily the fitness capital of the world. So food and Taco Bell was a staple of my diet for a long time. And when I moved to California years ago, and like I said, lived here a couple of years before I started my fitness journey. But when I started it, I went through a 6 months transformation, and I was introduced to circuit training and lifting weights and resistance training and nutrition, coaching, but more importantly, coaching and accountability. And when I went through that journey, I actually stripped down, 20 pounds of body fat, and I put on 20 pounds of muscle. But Dave, I actually weighed the exact same. But if you looked at my before and after picture, completely different people. And that's really the message that we want to share with our clients. It's not just about the scale. That's one measurement, but really your body fat percentage is going to be indicative. And to that point, to close the loop, while I weighed the same, my body fat percentage went down by about 7%. So that's proof in the pudding.
Okay, perfect. Now, Fit Body Bootcamp is interesting. And as I look at some of the gyms that have been pretty successful that I think of in the last 20 years, CrossFit, of course, came along and created tons of gyms all over the place. And their MO, well, it included weight loss and general fitness, was kind of to develop athletes. You then went into the Festivus games or maybe the CrossFit games, and it was very competitive and very much more masculine, I think, although many women have done it. But as far as gyms go, it just had more of a masculine, hard, black and chrome look. And it had that whole vibe and MO. And then I think of Orange Theory. And Orange Theory comes along, and it's got a very science-based kind of a thing. Everyone puts on the heart rate monitor, and you're, again, kind of competitive. You're looking at the stats, and you're doing your thing. You're hitting certain goals. But then I look at pictures and video of Fit Body Bootcamp, and it looks fun. It looks like people are having a good time. And it's a totally different vibe. Now, I haven't been to one. The closest one to me currently was about 20 miles away, and I probably should have just sucked it up and driven up there. But I did go to your website. I looked through videos. I looked through pictures, and I thought, oh yeah, there's a different vibe here. Could you talk to us about that and what you guys are trying to achieve?
Yeah, well, it's an incredible question. I mean, it starts, people come to us through results. So we talk about the training modality. We have 3 types of workouts. We have a metabolic conditioning workout or cardio. We have a strength workout, and then we have a classic workout. And all 3 workouts combine both metabolic conditioning and strength training. So that way we're, getting clients incredible results. But the metabolic conditioning workout has a bit more cardio focus. The strength training has a bit more resistance and weightlifting focus. And the classic has an even blend of both. So that's the core feature, because people don't want to just sign up for a gym membership just to sign up for a gym membership. They're coming for a result. So we need to be able to provide that result. And also too, in the back end, I'm sure we can talk about it. Really, fitness and human movement is absolutely, needed for a healthy and fit lifestyle. But really, body composition changing, losing fat, burning fat, really comes down to, the vast majority of that is what you put in your mouth from a nutrition perspective. And that's what we pride ourselves on. But really, Dave, to your point, talk about the vibe, the energy. We really pride ourselves in developing deep relationships and focusing on culture. And, that's from a leadership perspective, that's from a franchisor perspective, all the way down to our locations. And that's just super important, because let's face it, very few people, Dave, even myself included, I'm a fitness professional, absolutely love working out. That's the common misconception. I love the effective working out. And I love the whole vibrancy that it has in my life and my body and the results. But actual lifting weights, that is very tough. So, we know this to be true, especially for our dream clients we call Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones in our demographic, and it seems like very similar to your audience here, probably doesn't love working out. She knows she needs to. She knows that, she's putting herself last for a long period of time, so she needs to change that. But she wants a very fun, uplifting, friendly environment that are based off strong relationships with the coaches, with the fellow clients. And really that culture is really what keeps Mrs. Jones. So we like to say the results is really what brings Mrs. Jones in, but our culture, relationships, and the vibe of that community is really what keeps her long-term.
And so do you encourage them to come in 3 times a week and then they get those 3 different types of workouts, or 6 times a week, or 4? What is the MO? Like if you have someone sitting across from you right now, they're going to join the gym and asking you, how often do I come? What's the MO? What's your answer? What's the best way to take advantage of Fit Body Boot Camp?
Yeah, it's an incredible question. And the value of our program is not a gym membership. It's not a big box gym where it's like, hey, here are the weights. You're just renting access to them. Have fun. Good luck. Our program really at its core is a coaching program. You're really getting personal training in a group setting. So Dave, to answer that question, it really just depends on the client's results. So, instead of just giving you a shotgun answer, hey, you need to come, X, Y, and Z amount of times, it's really, okay, Mrs. Jones, what is your goal? Now, Dave, from a baseline perspective, we recommend 3 workouts a week. And that's really just to live a healthy and fit lifestyle. But again, and that's usually where we start clients on, but they, depending on their goal, they can, come train with us anywhere from 4 to 5, upwards of 6. Most clients don't do that. 4 to 5 is a sweet spot, but the very baseline is 3. But again, it just really depends on what that client's goal is. And that's the value of our coaching program.
Okay. And this podcast, while I'm a big fan of what you're doing and we're promoting Fit Body Boot Camp, but not everyone listening can even access one. Okay. So I'm going to back up just a little bit and talk about the MO. So let's talk about those people for a minute. What are some of the foundational aspects of health? So the person that's just at home listening and they're maybe not ready to get a gym membership or don't have access to a gym. And maybe I'll just prime the pump a little bit. We've already talked about HIIT workouts, and on your website, you kind of really emphasize those for their value. And so, and now you're talking about, but there is a variety, and ideally a person should work out 4 or 5 times a week. So to people listening, like, what would the good ratio be? If we're designing our own personal movement plan and we need to have some cardio, we need to have some HIIT workouts, you've already established that, in you guys' opinion, 30 minutes is the right time, not an hour, not an hour and a half, not 10, 30 minutes. Let's start there. Why 30 minutes?
Well, 30 minutes and what we've seen over the years in terms of developing our program is enough time where you're going to get a full body workout. You're going to get that blend of metabolic conditioning and resistance training. And it's going to be very effective for you long term. And it also is the amount of time that, typically speaking, especially not at first, but when a client starts, training with us, after a relatively short period of time, we'll say 12 weeks, a client can really go full force, for 30 minutes. There's programs out there that train for an hour, hour and 15, even hour and a half. The reality of the situation, though, is you as a client, there's no way you can maintain a very high work ethic for, more than 45 or 60 minutes. It's just really, really challenging. So that's the reason we've streamlined that program. And also too, our clientele is, the average ordinary people. We're not training high performance Olympic weight athletes or, clients that are trying to shave off a second on their NFL combine. Of course, if that was the case, our training modality would be different, but just everyday people. But to really bring it back, Dave, to your point about, what would be the foundations of working out and living a healthy, fit lifestyle if you don't have access to a Fit Body Bootcamp or something similar. Number one, it's moving your body 3 times a week, and maybe 30 minutes by yourself, 30 minutes or 45 minutes would be very challenging. Let's start with 20 minutes. Human nature, for whatever reason, we feel that it's either all or nothing. And I've been guilty, Dave, you have, and certainly your audience have as well. It's just how we're wired. So typically speaking, we get clients who haven't worked out in a decade, since high school as an example. They jump in and want to go pedal to the metal. They do that for 4 weeks or 2 weeks even, and they just get burnt out. At the end of the day, it's taking a step ladder approach. So number one, commit to yourself that you're going to move your body 3 times a week, ideally 30 minutes. But even if it's 20 minutes to start with 20 minutes. The second thing I would recommend, increase your hydration. we're actually, statistically speaking, the obesity pandemic is the biggest thing.
I'm going to have a drink while you talk about hydration.
Please, and thank you for that. But the reality of the situation is most people overeat and are chronically dehydrated. So by just drinking more, like you just did with your water jug, you're going to feel better. You're going to be more satiated, meaning you're going to feel full. You're going to eat less. And of course, hydration is just good for your whole body. And the third thing is sleep. You can work out to your blue in the face and even clean up your nutrition, but if you're sleeping 4 to 5 hours a night, that's typically not going to cut it for you. So long-term, that's going to have very adverse reactions in your health. So the third aspect is get at least 7 hours of sleep a night. If you do those three things to start, you're going to set yourself up for success.
I'm thinking of my own health journey as you talk about these things, and I just say amen to all of that. I've been all over the map in my health journey, and for years I was doing triathlon, and I got to a decent level of triathlon where I was doing 15 hours a week of training, with 5-hour long bike ride or run on a Saturday, and 10 hours during the week. I've done CrossFit, and I was competitive in CrossFit, and I'd go 4 or 5 times a week and do an hour and totally beat the crud out of myself. Really. There was times I felt like I was really strong and doing well. And other times I just felt completely beat up. Like I didn't want to drag myself to the gym. And now I've come to learn some of these things. I'll give you an example. I used to have insomnia. For several years there, I had many nights where I just didn't get a good night's sleep. And for those of you that have sleep trouble, I can relate. It's just a huge bummer. And while I've mostly overcome that, just last night, just every now and then, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I'm guessing, I just have a terrible night. And last night happened to be one of those, right? Where I was up a lot. I just couldn't fall asleep. My mind was racing and just miserable.
Do you correlate it to any nutrition protocol like caffeine? And maybe you're going there, sorry to interject, but I'm curious more than anything.
It seems to be random because my routine is pretty structured. As far as my weekly and monthly MO, I do have a small business, and sometimes we have stress there, right? So I think stress probably is at the root cause of it, and also the thing that it went away when I started a daily habit of meditation. So I think it's definitely stress related.
Oh, totally.
But anyways, this morning, knowing that I just didn't have much in the tank, I got on my rowing machine. I did a 10-minute workout, and it was awesome. And in just 10 minutes, which was all I felt I had, it was still way better than nothing.
Oh, yeah.
And a fantastic workout. And so this less is more concept is fantastic. I love it. And you also emphasize that actually it's kind of reverse in food. A lot of people think, now you mentioned most people eat too much. And yet when you get people going in your program, you find you have to encourage some people to eat more food once they get going, right?
Sometimes, absolutely.
This is not necessarily a diet that you're putting people on. What are your nutritional premises that you operate by?
Yeah, absolutely. So we really have a structured program for nutrition. And interestingly enough, what we've learned over the last decade is, most fitness professionals tend, in my experience and our experience from a brand perspective recruitment, really are attracted to the human movement, like the physicality of fitness. But then there's the other aspect, which is the nutrition aspect. And, they go hand in hand, but they are very two separate beasts. And typically speaking, some of our best nutrition coaches maybe don't have a ton of interest in the human movement and vice versa. So we do actually have 2 separate programs, because what we found is, some clients, they're good with their nutrition, or maybe they're not, but they don't want any support on it. They just want to move their body, start feeling good, etc. So, our boot camp model program is, the entry point, or the baseline, if you will. And then we have a boot camp plus model, which is really all your workouts, and you have access to the fitness coaching and training, but you also get nutrition coaching as well. And, typically speaking, we have a proprietary app that we've built out that's actually based around macronutrients, and we have a team of nutritionists on the back end. So it's very, very well structured and put together. But even, that all aside, because, it's a matter of, not to say that it's impossible to digest, in a 30-minute call, but really it's very specific to the person, if you will. But if you were to kind of like take a step back and talk about the foundations of nutrition, again, it really just depends on the client's goal. So it's a coaching program. So we're always like, Mrs. Jones or Mr. Jones, what do you really want to accomplish here? And most times it's fat loss. So one of the first action steps is you need to track your food. And it's very unpopular advice, very unpopular. But the fact of the matter is you need to be able to track what you're putting in your mouth. Just like an accountant and a business owner needs to track how much inventory they have or their profit and loss statements, or just like your car has a tracking gauge on how much gasoline there is. And shoot, when it's getting very low, you need to refill your gauge. At the end of the day, this is not popular advice, but this is very true. You need to be able to track your food, because from there you can create a benchline or benchmark, and then your coach can be able to adjust that here or there. And that's really the foundation of our coaching program. We have the technology piece. We really make it really streamlined, but really if you break it down, that's the core. And again, I guess to put a bow on this, other general guidelines: eat as much whole food as you possibly can, as less processed food as you possibly can, reduce your sugars as much as you possibly can. I mean, those are just general guidelines, but they work.
Yeah. And is it kind of keto-ish? Is it Mediterranean? Is there a certain kind of a MO it's similar to, or is it just completely customized and very, very different for different people? Low carb, anything like that?
Generally speaking, it's macronutrient based. So we're basically tracking macronutrients, eating healthy food, whole foods. And really you have, like, specifically to our coaching program, you have your protein in the three basic baseline macronutrients are your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats. Okay. So that's foundationally in all nutrition. Those are the major building blocks. And obviously, Dave, you're well schooled in this, but more so, coaching lessons for your audience. And really, a coach will decide based off what your metrics are, what you want to do in terms of your fat loss goals. There's three metrics. Okay. You're going to have basically a protein amount of grams of protein target a day. You're going to have a target for your carbohydrates, and you're going to have a target for your fats. And really, it's about tracking your food and making sure you get enough protein, you get enough carbohydrates, and you get enough fats. Now, in terms of the diets that you just referred to, I mean, there's many sorts of diets out there, Mediterranean, keto, et cetera, and they all have value. There's a lot of research in all of them, and for the right person, those work. But really taking a step back, we've created our program around macronutrients, because you can't really break down a nutrition or a diet any further than proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. So from a first principles perspective, that's how we build our nutrition coaching program. And there's leverage, there's guidance. I mean, certainly you can eat different types of foods, et cetera, just as long as you stay within your macronutrient count on a daily basis.
Okay, interesting. And then you have the app for that. So these people that have your premium app, your membership, I guess. So they're a member of Fit Body Boot Camp. They're going to the gym and they have the app. So do they track their intake indefinitely or for periods of time? Or like, are you having them do this like long term, always entering everything they eat? How does that work?
So typically speaking, and again, human nature, right? Like the vision would be long term. This is the way you live your life. However, human nature, we do well when we take a stepladder approach and break things down to bite-sized chunks. As an example, Dave, what's the famous adage? How do you eat an elephant? Well, the answer is one bite at a time. So, how do you, get on a nutrition program? Like one chunk of 12 weeks at a time. So really, like, our nutrition coaching program goes in 12-week intervals. And the vision is that a client continues to stay on there long-term. What ends up happening, though, is especially as a client gets better at tracking their food, the app is very intuitive. It's custom. So ultimately, as you enter different food types, it remembers those and saves those. So it becomes very, very easy. It's a skill that you have to learn. But I can track all my meals as an example, because I track as well, because I'm coaching our owners and coaches to do that same for their clients. I mean, it takes me less than 2 minutes a day, but I've been doing it for quite some time now. When I first started, it probably took 15 minutes. It was a big pain. I took a lot of effort and energy, but just like anything in life, kind of like riding a bike, after you do it for a little bit of time, it becomes human nature. So long story short, indefinitely. However, we break it in 12-week chunks.
And you track everything you eat, Bryce?
Oh, I never like to talk in absolutes, Dave. I'm a fitness professional. I would track.
Generally, you're shooting for daily.
About 85, 90% of
That's still impressive.
Yeah.
That's still impressive. Okay.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, you look fit. You look like the kind of guy that we could take off your shirt and have you flex your abs and we could do our laundry on them, right? So I want to know. I want to know. My listeners want to know too. Flat abs. We have all kinds of marketing out there, all kinds of ideas out there. One of the things about all the fitness MOs we talked about earlier is that a lot of people do not realize how hard you have to work to really get flat, lean abs. Now, first of all, how many of your customers do you think are really interested in that? I know you talked about you're not dealing with professional athletes. You're not dealing with fitness models or physique competitors. And so would you say that your average customer is pretty happy just, to lose that 20 pounds or 30 pounds or 40 pounds, and then that's about it? Or how many are just really trying to get really lean and washboard abs?
Yeah, it's an incredible question, Dave. And I would say probably 100% of our clients have the desire to get abs.
Okay. Yeah.
About less than 5 have actually the commitment, 5%, the commitment in order to get that, because it's no easy feat. Even for me, a guy like me, I'm a fit guy. I have 11% body fat. The way my genetics are, I have lines in my stomach, but I do not have like the washboard 6-pack abs you see on TV. And, for some people, there is a genetic component that makes it easier for sure.
That's right. Yeah.
Vast majority no, but I would say there's definitely movements, like physical movements in the gym in terms of core exercises and movements to strengthen your abs and to make them more pronounced. But at the end of the day, Dave, and this is a good call to action for your audience, your abs are made in the kitchen, not necessarily in the gym. And really it actually comes full circle. What we talked about earlier, and you brought this up, Dave, about the focus on body fat percentage. That actually is the inverse relationship with abs. Like, you need to get a very low body fat percentage, because everyone has abs. It's just most of us have a layer of fat that is over those. So ultimately, you need to get your body fat percentage to a very low point. And it actually just depends. I mean, guys can get lower because females have breasts, et cetera. So women's body fat percentage are typically higher. But there's ranges you can see on what typically, what percentage of body fat correlates to this particular look. But at the end of the day, that's actually where human genetics come in a little bit. Everybody's a little bit different. But long story short, if you're trying to get, 6-pack abs and really, get definition in your midsection, yes, you need to work on your core, but mostly you need to work on your nutrition and get your body fat percentage to a very low level. And when you do that, abs will come. But to put a bow on it to finalize that, if you look at fitness competitors, who go and do these shows, they get super lean. They'll do like a 90 to 120 day program, 3 to 4 months, where they really, really get super lean and they get on stage and their abs are showing. But typically speaking, that is very hard to sustain long term. So when they finish their show, then they have their off season, if you will, where they don't have their 6-pack abs. So just some food for thought.
It's good food for thought. And the fact is, in my professional opinion, and from the training I got at Precision Nutrition, which is where I got my fitness nutrition certification from,
gold standard.
They say that the cost of lean abs is too high for most people. Yeah. And that if it is a serious goal, you might want to consider and make it not such a serious goal, because the other lifetime or lifestyle things that you might have to let go, like a pizza and a beer every now and then on a Friday night, it can't be there. And they actually have a breakdown on their website of what it really takes. And it's got to be generally about 10% body fat for men, 16% for women, which is quite low. And they also talk about the unhealthy nature of these competitors that you talk about. They've often dehydrated themselves for the previous 3 days before that competition. Often their immune system is compromised. And while they look outstanding, they are actually not at their peak fitness when they're on the stage. They're at their peak fitness about 2 to 3 weeks later, which is super interesting.
And you are 100% right. You are 100% right. This is what the science shows.
So let's just think flat abs, not necessarily washboard, not necessarily doing our laundry on our abs, but just trying to be lean as much as is reasonable, right? Mm-hmm. And so for some people, it could be that letting go of the dream of the fitness competitor body is probably healthier than hanging on to it.
And Dave, I've let go of that dream as well, interestingly enough. And I love this conversation because we're just being very candid and all that. And like I said, I take good care of myself. I fluctuate between 11 and 12% body fat. To your point, for guys though, you need 10 or even sub 10 in order to maintain that. Could I do that? Yes. Could you do that? Yes. Could your audience do that? Yes. but there's a big price for that. And certainly with life and work and family, for me, I have other priorities. That said, I want to keep a lean figure, happy days, but I've given up that, long-term goal for the reasons I discussed, and I'm happy with it. I'm good with it.
Fantastic. Well, Bryce, you had mentioned that you had kind of a fitness transformation back in about 2007, and your own fitness journey. You weren't an obese guy, but you also weren't on a healthy track.
Right.
And what I'd like to know is what inspired you to go from whatever it was you were doing at the time, which you obviously weren't happy with, to changing your life and adopting. Was it a book? Was it a mentor? Tell us your story of what helped you go from wherever you were to becoming a fit example to other people.
Incredible question. Two things. Number one, you talked about a mentor. So that was part of the equation. And the other equation was a high level of pain. I wasn't confident, in terms of the way I looked. And like I said, I wasn't obese by any stretch of the imagination. I grew up in the Midwest, loved the place, great relationships. But when I was 21, I moved to Southern California, and I was so excited to be in Los Angeles, the palm trees, the blue skies, the beaches, but also the plastic capital of the world. And when I moved there, I definitely, was young, was far from home, had homesickness, didn't have any professional skills to offer the world, didn't have a lot of friends in my network, although, I made some friends, relatively quickly there. But I was actually with some buddies, and this was kind of like in the back of my mind for a period of time. And I had, many more dark days than good that first year at LA, especially just kind of getting acclimated, et cetera. And my fitness, I just didn't have the energy, the vibrancy, the enthusiasm that I now do, which really the foundation came for fitness. But this is such an embarrassing, it's such a trivial story in the grand scheme of things, but it's true because everyone has their pain points. But I was out, on a Saturday afternoon, I was with my friends, and guys just being, guys. And one of my buddies wanted to give me a hard time. So I was with there were some girls over there, and he yells out in the corner of the pool. He's like, "Bryce, it looks like you have islands for nipples." And I stopped, and I'm like, I don't even really fully know what that means today, but really what he was implying is I didn't have a developed chest and that I had some body fat around, and I was so embarrassed. And it sounds so trivial at the time, but between that happening, between like my low self-esteem and confidence, and then also too, the fortuitous situation, I had a buddy within probably 1 month that I went to college with that wasn't on the cover of Men's Health, but he could have been. And he ended up moving to Orange County. We ended up living together, and the stars aligned through it was in my subconscious. I had a desire, I was in pain. I had that really embarrassing situation, which seems so trivial now. And then mirroring it with a buddy that basically was the epitome of health and fitness that we lived together. And it still actually took me, Dave, about a month before I mustered up enough courage to ask him how he got fit. But then once I did, I was in it for being very candid with you, the vanity. I wanted to basically not have islands for nipples. I wanted to have a developed chest. I wanted to have like a good, physique, if you will. But going through that transformation, and this is the really big message for your audience. Yes, it's important to look good and feel good because that's going to be, give you more confidence and self-esteem. But fitness was way more than just the vanity play. It gives you more energy, enthusiasm, vibrance. And, people say sometimes I can't afford to get fit. And Dave, my response is you cannot afford not to get fit, because for me, I ended up becoming one of the worst worst performing sales rep in the company. And with a 12-month clip of becoming a fitness guy and with going through my transformation, I became this top performing sales rep in my company. It literally was life-changing. So that was really the really candid, story between a pain point and a fitness mentor that really changed my life.
You body shamed. He was a body shamer.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, it's a good thing that it created a positive outcome and not a lifelong scar.
Totally. And you know what? That's another topic for another day, but I practice what I now have adopted called Stoic philosophy. And if you've heard it before, it's really just basically understanding that the obstacles, the challenges in life, that's the way. Those are things that make you better. And I didn't fully grasp it at the time, but you're right. Thankfully, when he body shamed me, I didn't go down through a negative path, but I took that as like, you know what? I'm going to make a change, and it's worked out for me and the others within my influence.
Well, you'll be happy to know that I have a brand new grandson, my 6th grandbaby, born just a few months ago, and his middle name is Aurelius.
Really? Your kid? Well, first of all, congrats. And that is so inspiring after
Isn't
Marcus
that awesome?
Aurelius, one of the key Stoics of all time, the most famous, or excuse me, powerful man in Rome at the time. I think he was the last of the fifth good emperor. So that is incredible. I'm really fired up just to hear that, Dave.
Yeah, it's my son and my daughter-in-law that are inspired by his writings and works, and gave my grandson his middle name. So it's
That's
very cool.
incredible.
I'm a big fan, and for a while there, I was reading letters from a Stoic, one a night. I would read one letter before I went to bed, and I absolutely loved that habit. It was really uplifting and inspiring. And what amazed me most, Bryce, and I'm sure you can relate to this, was that the timeliness. You can't believe these things were written over 2,000 years ago.
2,000 years ago.
It's
2,000 years ago.
And they have some common sayings, like sayings that we use today were used then in ancient Rome. And any wise person today could have written those, and they wouldn't sound much different.
It's incredible. I'm so glad that you brought this up. We have so much in common here because it is so true. I mean, this philosophy 2,000 plus years ago, it's still very true to this day, and couldn't agree more. And it just actually showcases like human nature at its core. If we understand human nature, we understand ourselves better. We can be better people.
Well, fantastic. Well, Bryce, tell us more. How do people learn about Fit Body Bootcamp, and if there's one near them?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. The best way is to visit our website, which is fitbodybootcamp.com. That's fitbodybootcamp.com. It's the best way to find us. And then, of course, we'd love to continue to offer value to your audience after this. And my social media handles is real Bryce Henson, and not to be confused with fake Bryce Henson, but that's where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Fantastic. And do you have any closing thoughts for us, Bryce, before I let you go?
My closing thoughts is, first and foremost, I love what you're doing, Dave. We need to change the conversation, and I'm very, very passionate about this. And certainly, as we've went through a very challenging time and looking at this from a Stoic philosophy mindset, the last 2 years with the COVID pandemic, et cetera, as we're hopefully, off to greener pastures. My message is this, yes, COVID was real and it affected a lot of people very sadly. So my heart goes out, but really, I do think we need to change the conversation. And as much as fear was put out in the media and the politicians, one of the things that really I was disappointed on is the conversation was not had about health and fitness and working out and sunlight and vitamin D and clean nutrition and hydration. And I think that's where we need to get to as a society, because let's face it, actually, speaking of Marcus Aurelius, he went through the Antioch plague when he was the emperor of Rome. There's going to be another disease. There's going to be another virus around the corner. That's just the nature of the world we live in. But we as a society need to change the conversation. Instead of about fear and sickness, it needs to be about health and wellness and fitness. And when we do that collectively, we're going to be way better equipped to handle the next, virus, et cetera. And we're all going to be better off for it. So that's my parting piece of wisdom and message to you and your audience. And I just want to thank you for being on the same mission with us.
Well, thank you so much. That was so well said. I mean, I don't know if you had that memorized, but that was really, really good.
No, I just am passionate about it, but thank you. I appreciate it.
It was fantastic. Bryce, thanks so much for coming on the Nairobi Health Show. It's been a really great conversation, and you've given us a lot of great tips and ideas and things to think about. So thanks again for coming on the show.
Dave, thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, and really appreciate you having me on.
Okay. And for those of you listening, this is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and